Full screen? Sure.
Come on. Sorrow is one very long moment. Hi, everybody. I'm not really here yet, but you can hear me, and that's okay. I'm glad to be here. It's been a long time. I'm waiting to hear the first question from
the first
Timothy.
question is...
Yes.
The first question is, what was it like to be directed by Lee Strasberg?
Oh, what was it like to be directed by Lee Strasberg? Well, it was great. He was great. I have to tell you that I was not a fan of the studio before I got here. I didn't like method actors. I thought they were a little nuts. And then I worked with Helen Hayes in the Cherry Orchard on television, and she thought I was wonderful. And she said, "You've got to work with Lee Strasberg. He is the only one who knows what acting is." And that really hooked me. But then I thought, how am I going to work with Lee Strasberg? And then the next morning, I got a phone call from a friend of mine, an actor. He said, "I've got an appointment for an audition for the Actors Studio, and I need a partner." I said, "Well, isn't that strange? I need an audition, and I'm willing to join you." And I did, and I got in. And what I want to say first, because you are all actors out there, that Lee never called all of us together in a group and gave a note session that went on and on and on. He said whatever he had to say to each of us individually in a moment of casual talking. It was never a stressful thing. I remember my first direction from him, which was marvelous. We were about to block Act One, and I said to him, "Lee, I'm supposed to be fat here. That sisters are saying that I'm gaining weight. How fat do you want me to be? I'd like to know what to wear in the rehearsal." He said, "No, no, no. No, just the weight you are. We're going to give you a suit that's a size too short, a size too tight." And by God, that worked. I felt uncomfortable in it. I understood what they were teasing me about. He was brilliant on that kind of thing. But the most brilliant thing was in the next act, when I'm married and I am reading the notebook from Moscow University and reminding me of what I haven't been and what my sisters are sorry about, that I haven't become a professor at the university. And Lee said to me, "What are you using for the notebook?" I said, "Oh, I have that all worked out. I have it worked out. My friend, Lorraine Hansberry, has written a play about a Greenwich Village newspaper with a Jewish editor, and she wants me to play the part on Broadway, but I'm not going to do it because I'm going to Stanford. I'm going to start a theater and teach there. So this is something I would love to have done, but I'm not going to do." He said, "No, no, that's not personal enough." I said, "It's not?" He said, "No." So then I came in the next day with a book of poetry that I loved. He said, "Whatever it is, it's not personal enough." And no matter what I did, letters from friends, all kinds of things. And I finally said to my wife, "Barbara, what am I going to do?" She said, "Well, you know the baby, the picture of the baby that you love so much, why don't you put that in the book?" I said, "A picture of the baby in the book?" She said, "It would be personal." I said, "Okay, I'll try it. I'll try anything now." And so I put the picture in the book. And I'm standing off stage, and Natasha yells, "Andre! Andre!" And I say, "Coming!" And I close the book quick, and I realize suddenly that I'm not sure whether the picture is sticking out or not, but I don't have time to look, and I run. And I get to her, and she's And I'm kind of hiding the book from her, and she's asking me about switching bedrooms with the baby and the sisters, and I'm not listening. I'm just saying, yeah, yes, 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 yes. Oh, sure, whatever you, yes. And then she says, well, I'll go upstairs, but the messenger from the school board is here. I said, send him in. He comes in, and I'm sitting at the table, and I look up at him and I say, I was just looking at this notebook, this notebook, and I couldn't hold it anymore. I started laughing because it was so ludicrous. And Lee said, that's it. That's it. Something like that is what you need each time. That's perfect. Wow, what a lesson that was. And then in the second part of the first act, the second act, he gives me a dance. It says Andre dances. And I've seen Three Sisters, but I've never remembered any Andre doing anything particular except moving around. So he got the brother of Luther Adler, who was a dancer, I think, and he taught me a Russian dance, a really athletic, you saw it in the movie, an athletic Russian dance, and you saw Andre dance. And you understood why they thought he was going to be a professor at the university and why they're sorry that he's not. All of a sudden, you got the whole look of the loss of what this boy has become. And then in the third act, I've gone in to defend myself against their accusations, to let them know that I'm happy to be married and that I'm happy to be a member of the district board. And Lee said to me, when you go in, go right over to the table where there's a chair, a dining chair up against the table, and put your hands on the back of the chair. Well, I didn't ask him why. You wouldn't do that. I said, okay, Lee, and I walked over and I put my hands on the chair. And in that moment, I was on trial. I was standing in the dock and defending myself as best I could. And although I had been Andre in another production just a few months before, it never had quite that mixed pain and anger that it got from that moment, because he told me to put my hands on the chair. And you didn't see that in the movie because they changed a lot of things for the camera to give it variety or whatever you might want to call it. But I retained everything that he gave me. And I think one of the best was the last. When you saw me coming in with the buggy saying, where is it gone? My youth when I was young and gay and clever. And I was so sorry for myself. I wanted to collapse, and I had tears in my eyes, a distraction in my aspect. And he came to me after a couple of rehearsals. He said, Gerry, Irina cries when the Baron leaves her to go to the duel. And then Masha cries in the next scene saying goodbye to Rashina. I don't think Chekhov would write 3 crying scenes in a row. Do you think that? I said, no, I don't think he would do that either. Well, what should I do? He said, I think you should look at yourself when you're talking to yourself and find out why and when you talk to yourself. All right, I said, and a couple of days later I did something foolish. And I was in the bathroom washing my hands, and I looked in the mirror and I said, you fool, what did you do? I was talking to myself because I didn't like what I had done. And I understood, not where is it gone, my youth, but where, oh my God, what I threw away, look what I lost. Oh, a sudden recognition that not only that the sisters were right, but that everything was wrong. And I am grateful for everything he taught me in those few little suggestions. And that's what it's like to work with Lee Strasberg. At least it was for me. I just had the most wonderful time being led, being directed in a direction and not told what to do, but something that would give me what I finally understood was privacy. When I had that baby picture in the book, when I was standing with my hand on the chair, they didn't know that I was thinking I was on trial. I had thoughts that kept me alive. Now, I have something to say about Lee before I finish being questioned on this that has nothing to do with what it's like to work with Lee, but this is something I've wanted to tell the people at the Actors Studio for a long time, and this is my chance. We all, in the days I was there, went through the craziness of Stella Adler saying that Lee Strasberg didn't know anything about the method, and she met Stanislavski in Paris, and he told her what it was, and that Lee was all wrong. And I always hated that. And then one day I found a book written by the doorman of the Moscow theater and the Moscow actors. And he had a memoir of all the different nights that the actors got together and reminisced. And all of a sudden, I come across, and then there was the time Stanislavski came back from Paris from a holiday, and he said, I had the craziest thing happen to me in Paris. This crazy actress from New York, she came up to me and she said, they're driving me crazy. The people I'm working with, I don't understand what they're saying, and I don't, would you please work with me a little bit so I could, he said, what can I do in one little thing just to explain the whole. I finally, in desperation, he says, I grabbed a pail from the hallway where the women were mopping, and I brought it in, I put it down, I said, now you get down and you wipe the floor and say your lines. And she did. And it hit her. He said she just got thrilled. She said, oh, Mr. Stanislavski, that is so brilliant. I understand. Thank you. Thank you. He said, and she went away happy. But there was no mention. There was no mention of his saying that Lee Strasberg was wrong.
Oh, that's funny.
And all those years, we've had that kind of crap going on. And I had that story. And I've been here for 50 years now in Palo Alto saying, when can I tell the people? And I've told it. So now I'm through, Timothy. You can ask me the next question.
I wanted you to
Yes?
giving a round of applause. You told me yesterday an interesting thing about the opening of the play being different from what we saw
Yes.
with Gerry Page.
That's very good. Very good. This was one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen of an individual actor setting up a scene. We've all seen Three Sisters many times in different ways, and it usually starts, Father died a year ago today. Your name day, Arena. It was raining and snowing. And that wasn't what Page did. What Page did was this. She sat at a desk next to an open window with a curtain, and she was correcting papers, and she had a headache. And she had one hand on her head, and she was rubbing it, and she was gritting her teeth and crossing off and making these things. And every once in a while, she had this oscillating fan that she asked for off stage. And I thought that was strange. But the fan hit the curtains, and it would go across the papers, and she would push it away. And then on the third time, she stopped, and she looked out the window, and she went, Father died a year ago today. At your name day, Arena. You were fainting, and I thought you. And she goes on and on, just ecstatic. And Arena says, why talk about it? She says, because today the sun is shining.
Oh.
And I saw a beginning to the play that I never could have imagined. That was the way she worked. She was a genius. Thank you for letting me tell that story. What's next?
Well, let's take some questions. Does someone have a question?
May I ask one more favor while we are here?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Of course.
one of the things I got from Lee was watching the beauty in the faces of the people who did private moments. And I really thought that was an astonishing thing. And he was criticized for it because they said it was too psychological and it wasn't fair to make people expose themselves to being nervous in front, whatever, taking their clothes off or whatever they might do, to do something that they wouldn't do if somebody was in the room. And he got it from Stanislavski, who was not happy with the way he used his hands in Enemy of the People. And on a vacation, he said, what can I do to stop these gestures? He said, I thought they were good, but now I'm doing it over and over again. He said, you know what, to myself, he said, I will just think about my hands and not try to hold them down. So he got back to Moscow, and in the first performance of Stockman after that, he thought about his hands and just watched. When they felt like making a gesture, he would make it, but otherwise he lost that automatic repetition that we get into when we have something that we like and we keep doing it. And then he noticed that he had never felt so calm, that he'd never felt so at home on the stage, and that the audience was there, but they weren't his enemies. They were just watching him find out how to use his hands without being frustrated. And Lee took that and made that private moment because he saw the value in it, and I did too. And when I came to Stanford, I started giving it to my students there, and they would do all kinds of things, doing the rosary, playing with puppets, one guy imitating John Wayne. They did things that would be embarrassing, but they did it in front of us and experienced the freedom of crossing that line. And then one day I was riding my bicycle to class, and it's a very flat land here in Palo Alto, very easy to get there. And I was practicing my song because I made them sing. The MFA students, I made them sing at every class. They would each get up and sing a song, and they would do some Shakespeare, and they would do some, I did all kinds of technical things before we did scene work. And I noticed my voice was different. My voice had changed when I was riding the bike. And so I came to the class, and I'm going to do for you what I did for the class, because I wanted to do this as a demonstration. I got excited about it today, and when Timothy called, I said, I'd like to share this, because it's part of the work at the studio that was so valuable to me. And I found a way to make it work. I said, I'm going to sing a song in two different ways. This is the first way. The first way is like this. Before Lord God made the sea and the land, he held all the stars. And then I stopped. I said, now I'm going to sing it in a second way. Before Lord God made the sea and the land, he held. And they said, what are you doing? How did you make your voice like that? I said, I didn't make my voice like that. I imagined I was riding my bicycle. And that turning of the attention from my voice to my feet allowed my whole upper body to relax in a way that I couldn't do unless, I don't know what. And so we kept doing that. We kept finding physical things to release us as we got on stage. And then one day, a few years later, I was at opening night of a play at ACT, and I was playing a butler who was a very nosy, gossipy butler in a play by, the physics, I don't know what the hell it was, but at any rate, what? No, not Oscar Wilde, not that one. My wife is here. She's prompting me, but it was the wrong play. Tom Stoppard, right. My son got it right. Okay. Anyway, I realized that I was uncomfortable before I went on the stage for the first preview. And I didn't like being uncomfortable. I said, well, why don't you try the private moment? Why don't you come up with something? I couldn't think of a thing. And then at that moment, the lighting man walked past me. And that was providential because I thought he was a piece of work. He was from the East. His shirts were buttoned with a beautiful tie. His jacket was always on. He never said a word to anybody. He just went around doing his lighting as if we didn't exist. And I suddenly got mad at him, and I thought, what if I walked into the men's room one day after he'd been pissing, and he turned around, and before he could put his things away, he started doing the hula. And I started to laugh. And they said, what are you laughing at, Gerry? I said, I can't tell you. And I couldn't. I would have been so embarrassed. And that was the secret. I taught that to my students and to everybody who comes to work with me. That's the first thing I teach them. Find something embarrassing that you couldn't say to me, and then say the speech that you're practicing. And they all find that the speech doesn't mean a thing. They're all involved, like the baby's picture in the book. Like all these things, it was a distraction of multiple worth. Yes. Now I'm ready for anything else. Go ahead.
Okay, shall we take some questions?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Okay. Someone would like to know if you could tell us what it was like working with Kim.
I will.
I assume you hadn't worked with her before this, is that correct?
No, I had not. I had worked with Gerry Page. Actually, when I was 21 years old, I directed her in The Glass Menagerie. Can you imagine that? Anyway, Kim, I didn't know Kim before this, and we were on the same floor. Kim and Luther Adler and I shared the two dressing rooms on the second floor. It was quite an honor to be that low to the stage, but I got to know Kim very well, and I didn't have many scenes with her, but I will tell you that she was very wrapped up in her fierce determination to show an independent woman. And she did not play a woman, to my mind, who was living in 1903. We were coming down the stairs for the third act one night, and she said, Gerry, how long is this since the first act when I met Vershinin? And I said, oh, Kim, I've got a wife and 2 kids since then. One of them is talking already, so it's got to be at least 2 or 3 years. She said, and we haven't fucked until now? I don't believe it! Now, Lee had done something brilliant with the scene in the third act. If you know the play at all, and you've seen tonight, the lines that Chekhov was written is, I want, from Vershinin, I want like the devil to live, ta-tum, 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 tum, and she goes ta-tum, tum, and he goes ta-tum, 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 tum. Well, what does that mean? When I first read that, I thought, this is crazy. But then Lee said, it's from Eugene Onegin. It's a song from Eugene Onegin. La, 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 la. And he says, now, what I want, when we get to that scene, this was in the table reading, when we were sitting around the table. He said, when we get to that scene, remember, Kim and Kevin, he said, everybody is asleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. They've been fighting a wildfire. The town has been burning. There are refugees all over the place. And her husband and the Baron and I don't know who else are sitting there with their head in their hands and not moving. And Kim, as Masha, is sitting on a chaise longue and not saying anything. And in the quiet comes Vershinin, and he's all wrapped up with excitement about the how this felt like he was in battle. And he was going on, and he says, and I want like the devil to live. And Kim had asked me one night to come and look down and see what was happening. that he was killing her on the stage. And I said, all right. And when he said, da, 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 Kim put her heels under her and lifted her torso and opened her legs and went, da, da, da. Masha is giving herself physically to him in front of the audience, in front of her husband if he should be awake. It was totally, she told me and she told other people, she told Timothy, that Lee told her that the way you're playing Masha, you would have walked to Moscow. It was a beautiful performance, but not of the character that I thought Chekhov had written. But that did not override the fact that she was lovable. She was next to us in the dressing room, and aside from her interpretation, which I didn't agree with, and I didn't have many scenes with her, so I didn't really play with her, but there was the one when she asked me whether I loved her mother and her mother loved me. Well, you know, for those of you who don't know the secret of Three Sisters, there's very few people who do. But I've worked on that play in four different theaters. And the secret is that Masha is the doctor's daughter.
Oh.
Yes. That the wife of the general got pregnant and wanted the doctor, this is a story I made up, and she wanted the doctor to give her an abortion and he wouldn't do it. And so she was born. Masha was born. And then to punish her, because the general knew it wasn't his, he made her have the next baby, who was Irina. So Irina was born completely without love. And Masha has a feeling that the doctor is hanging around for some reason. She says to him, did you love my mother? Because she's been afraid to ask him all this time. He said, very much. And then she said, did she love you? That I no longer remember. And those are the moments in Chekhov when you are revealing the difficulty of communication, the difficulty of reaching other. If it's too easy to talk to each other, you're not in that play. Okay, next question.
All right.
I asked him to tell you about trying to avoid rehearsing with Shelley.
What about rehearsing?
Bob Heller would like to tell us about how you tried to avoid rehearsing with Shelley.
Oh, that's a wonderful, terrible story. Shelley Winters played, as you know, Natasha in the movie. You saw her do it. I was at Stanford directing Seagull, and I didn't want to go back. Well, there's a funny little story about this. Mendy Wager had taken my place when I came to Stanford, and then he revealed to the cast that he had negotiated a recording contract with Columbia Records, and now that he was in it, he wanted it to be recorded, and they said, no, bring Gerry back and we'll do it. He said, I won't. They said they never made the record. And then I got a call from Cheryl Crawford in '65. She said, Gerry, we've been offered a lot of money if we make a movie, but the cast will not do it if Mendy is in it. They want you to come back. I said, I don't want to do it. And my wife and the cast, everybody said, go, do it. We'll take care of the play. Do it. So I went. And I got there, and the first thing Shelley said, when are you going to rehearse? When are we going to rehearse? And I knew her. I knew there was a story that when she, A Hatful of Rain, she came back from Hollywood, and she got rid of the woman playing the lead when they went to Broadway, and she played the lead and told everybody what to do until the director yelled, shut up! And she said, shut up, Miss Winters. And he said, shut up, Miss Winters. And she said, okay. So I knew that story. And she'd come to my house once with her daughter to get her daughter into Stanford. I knew her very well. But I didn't want to, I was so tired and uncomfortable, and I had a cold, and I didn't want to go through rehearsing with her and hear her tell me what I should do. So I said, give me a break. I just got here and I've got jet lag and we're not going to be on for a while. So the next day she said, can we rehearse today? I said, Shelley, I would really like to rehearse with you, but I'm still recovering. Could you hold off? And the third day I was sitting with Stella Adler in the dressing room and she came in and she said, this is it. You've got to rehearse with me. We're shooting that scene today, the first scene. I said, Shelley, I'm very sorry. Somebody should have told you. And nobody did, but I don't rehearse. She said, you what? And Luther said, that's right, Gerald doesn't rehearse. Didn't you know that? She said, nobody told me. Oh, well, I said, somebody showed off. And she said, well, how could he be in a play with Lee Strasberg? He said, oh, Lee knew that. Jerry would sit there and watch the rehearsals, and as soon as the understudy would go on, and as soon as the people came, Jerry would, oh, I've got to go to the bathroom. And he got up and he ran out and he told everybody. And when Shelley came out of the dressing room, she went to Page, she went to Kim. Everybody said, oh, no, Jerry does not rehearse. That's the truth. So she came in as Natasha, nervous on two scores. One is the character and one is, what the hell is Gerry gonna do? And I get her and we go onto the porch and the scene is alive, really alive. Like they used to say, we won't rehearse at the studio, we just get there and beautiful things will happen. And we did the scene, and as soon as we finished, she went up to the booth and she said, I want to see the tape. And so the director said, the tape? She said, the scene we just shot, I want to see it. So he showed it to her and she came down, she said, you've got something. She said, that was wonderful. And we did it that way all the way through. And she gave me a beautiful cup. And she said in one of her books that people have said that was the best performance in a film she has ever done. That's my story that Bobby Heller knows about. I wasn't going to tell it, but there it is.
Do we have another question?
Are we done?
How well does the film version capture what happened on stage overall?
How well does the film version capture what happened on stage overall?
Let me think. I'm running it. I have 2 copies of it, actually, one for each of my children, the videotape. I've seen it a couple of times. I don't think it goes... Well, first of all, Shelley Winters was not as good as Barbara Baxley in that part. That took something away. And in a way, it was because we were in a different environment. We were in this little cramped studio rooms, like in the third act. I didn't have my hands on the chair. I didn't stay in jail. I had to move around because he wanted the camera to move around. So it was, you know what, we had already played it for several months. And we didn't, and we also did it in London, which is another story altogether. But what the film has is moments that were very beautiful. But I didn't see Gerry Page sitting at the window and starting that way. A lot of the things I loved could not be done in the film. But it's not the film's fault. And Bogart, who directed it, is a very sensitive man. But I would say 75. Give it a 75 or an 80. It isn't perfect, but it's not terrible. In fact, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Do we have another question? Question?
Well, what were the differences between Shirley Knight and Barbara Baxley?
Well, no. The difference between Shirley Knight and Sandy Dennis.
Oh! God forgive me. She's dead, but Sandy Dennis, I couldn't stand it. Sandy Dennis I was the understudy for Thousand Clowns, and I watched her for a year, and her stammer just drove me nuts. It was it was not real anymore. It was an attempt to be real. I don't know what Lee saw in her. He wanted her to play it originally. But she was, of course, she was in the film. I forgot about that. Shirley Knight was much closer to the part. In fact, there was one moment I have to tell now that you say Shirley Knight, that was actually a very good moment. And I was trying to cut down all the things I wanted to talk about because the movie is going so long. I thought you'd all want to go home. But if you want to hear, I will tell you that Shirley Knight had to cross the stage in rehearsal, and she didn't say anything in the middle of the stage. She stopped speaking and got to the other side. And Lee said, Shirley, either walk faster or something, but it doesn't work with the pause. She said, I've got to do it that way. He said, you do? Why? She said, well, I need time to process the thoughts that are in that speech. And that's what I take in that moment before I get to the table. And Lee said, are you thinking in character? She said, yes. He said, never think in character. Characters are not people. Characters are words on paper put down by somebody who hears those words in their head, but there are no thoughts that could be expressed. You must think real thoughts. I said, you mean like, why is the audience coughing? He said, exactly. And then he said the words that were engraved on my heart. They will never know what you are thinking, but they will know whether you are thinking or not.
Oh.
He was a genius. He was a genius. I did not have any social time with him. The longest lunch I ever had was Lee Strasberg, where we didn't say a word to each other. But working with him was a pleasure. In fact, he paid me the highest compliment I could imagine that he could pay anybody. He said, I'm sorry you're going to California, Gerry, because whatever play I would do next, I would like you to be in it.
Did you ever work with him again?
With what?
Did you ever work with him again?
No, he never did another play.
Oh.
And I didn't think he would.
Yeah.
He never did another play. But there were times in Los Angeles, I should tell you one bizarre story. I had a two-man theater after I left Stanford, Paul Richards and I, and we decided when we were closing it down after 9 years that we would do the last performance in the Actors Studio in LA. And so we got permission from them, and they announced that Paul and Gerry are going to do their two-man theater, and we filled the place. And Lee Strasberg, I heard Lee Strasberg is coming to see it. And we're driving in the car, and I said, oh my God. And my son, who was, I guess, around 8 or 9, he said, what's the matter, Daddy? I said, my teacher is going to be at that performance, and it's making me nervous. He said, then you better fuck up right away. So I said, all right, I guess so. So when I got there, I went behind the studio down there and smoked some weed. And said, I fucked up right away. And then I came around the front, and there was Lee Strasberg getting out of his car on the parking lot. And in my stoned, whatever that is, I went like this. I raised my hands, and he raised his hands. And the two of us walked across the parking lot with our hands in the air. It was such a Russian moment. It was marvelous. Anyway, it was great. And he liked our show. He stood up and clapped, which made everybody else step up and clap.
Sure.
But that was, and then sometimes I would be down there doing a film, and I would go to the studio, and he would be there moderating. I remember a few times when, but we never spoke. I think it must have been he never even said, there was a story about that. We were having lunch outside the studio in New York, and a girl came in from lunch crying. She said, I said hello to Lee, and he didn't say hello back. And Gerry Page said, oh, he's always like that, honey. He doesn't talk like that. He just, never mind. And then we went back. She and I were doing a scene. So we went back to rehearse, and there was Lee in the lobby, and she said, hi, Lee. He didn't say a word. And we got into the rehearsal, and she said, what did I do? What did I do? What did I say? Why? I said, Lee, that's just the way he is. It's just the way he was. But it didn't matter to me, because working with him and listening to him in the studio, here's a little story. I studied first with Uta Hagen, and it was forbidden to act in her class. You had to do exercises all the time, exercises. Maybe with one person you could do a scene if there was a problem you wanted to work on. And so I got up one day and I did Now I Am Alone. And the place got very quiet because this was against all rules. And I was a pet of hers. And she said, Gerald, when I got through, do you have mannerisms? I said, yes, I do. She said, what are they? I said, when I start acting, one shoulder goes up, my toes get a little pointed to each other, and I get a funny tilt to my head and maybe a little smile. She said, you know you do that? I said, yeah, I know. She said, well, I can't help you. That was the end of my studying with Uta Hagen. 2 years later, I am doing my first scene at the studio, and I'm sitting in front of these people, and I say, I've not wanted to come to the studio all my life. I've been afraid of the method, but right now I'm not happy with my work. And Lee Strasberg points his toes together, lifts his shoulder. He says, you mean this? I said, yeah. He said, you came to the right place. And I did.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think maybe we should wrap it up.
Okay, I think
Gerry?
that's one of the best stories.
This has been such a delight just to be able to talk with you and to hear your stories after having seen your performance. And, it was a very meaningful evening for all of us here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Big round. I hope you can hear that.
I can. Yes, you are. Oh. Thank you.